All right, let's talk about something that billions of us, myself included, feel like we just can't live without: caffeine. It's the heart of our morning ritual, right? But it's also the source of those jitters, the dreaded afternoon crash, and honestly, a lot of confusion. So, is it a helpful tool or a hidden trap? Let's get into it. Yeah, you heard that right. The coffee, the tea, the energy drink you might even be sipping on right now, it's technically a psychoactive drug. That just means it alters our brain function, our mood, how we perceive things. And its popularity is, well, it's off the charts. And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, that's 10 million tons of coffee beans consumed around the world in 2020 alone. We're not just enjoying it, we are consuming it on an absolutely massive industrial scale. So, how does one little molecule have such a grip on the entire planet? Okay, so first, let's pull back the curtain on the magic trick. How does caffeine actually work to make us feel so awake, so alert? The science is actually pretty straightforward, and it all boils down to a clever case of mistaken identity happening inside your brain. The secret is something called molecular impersonation. Caffeine is basically a master of disguise, and it has one very specific target that it's trying to trick. Okay, so check this out. On the left, you've got a molecule called adenosine. You can think of this as your brain's natural sleepy signal. The longer you're awake, the more of it builds up, and it plugs into these little receptors in your brain to make you feel tired. Now, look at the molecule on the right. That's caffeine. See how similar they look? It's not a perfect copy, but it's close enough to pull off a pretty amazing biological heist. So the fancy science term for this is an adenosine receptor antagonist, but all that really means is that caffeine gets to your brain's receptors first and parks an adenosine's spot. But here's the kicker, the really key insight. Caffeine doesn't give you energy. It's not fuel. All it does is stop your brain from getting the memo that it's actually tired. You're not adding gas to the tank. You're just putting a piece of tape over the empty light. But, and you knew there was a but coming, right? As anyone who has ever felt that brutal 3 p.m. slump can tell you, what goes up must come down. That feeling of alertness isn't free. There's a metabolic price to pay, and it leads straight to that dreaded caffeine crash. So, here's the domino effect. First, caffeine gives you a jolt of cortisol, your main stress hormone, the fight or flight one. Cortisol then tells your liver, hey, release a bunch of sugar into the bloodstream. We need quick energy. But, and here's the twist, cortisol also tells your cells to kind of ignore insulin for a minute. You know, the hormone that's supposed to grab that sugar? Well, your pancreas senses all this sugar floating around with nowhere to go, and it freaks out, pumping out even more insulin to handle the problem. Then once the cortisol wears off, you're left with all this extra insulin, which causes your blood sugar to absolutely plummet. You can think of cortisol and insulin as, well, metabolic frenemies. They both manage your energy, but they have totally opposite jobs. Cortisol is the drill sergeant yelling, use energy now, while insulin is the calm quartermaster saying, okay, let's store this energy for later. When caffeine steps in, it basically lets the drill sergeant win the argument for a little while at least. And the result of that hormonal battle, that is the caffeine crash, that sudden fog, that wave of fatigue that hits you in the afternoon. It's not just in your head, it's a real physical event. It's your body reacting to a sudden drop in its main fuel, a state called hypoglycemia. Okay, so you might be thinking, hold on, if this happens to everybody, why is it so different for me and my friends? Why can one person have an espresso after dinner and sleep like a log while someone else gets all jittery from a single cup in the morning? Well, the answer is actually written in our DNA. Seriously, this difference isn't about your tolerance or your willpower. It's about your genetics, and it really all comes down to how well one specific enzyme in your liver does its job. Let's meet the star of the show, an enzyme called CYP1A2. The easiest way to think of this little guy is as the dedicated caffeine cleanup crew in your body, and how fast that crew works is pretty much decided by your genes. And it splits most of us into two big groups, the fast metabolizers and the slow metabolizers. So here's the breakdown. If you're a fast metabolizer, Your cleanup crew is super efficient. They get that caffeine processed and out of your system quickly, so the effects don't last as long and you're generally less sensitive. But if you're a slow metabolizer, your enzyme crew is, well, they're a bit sluggish. The caffeine hangs around in your system for way longer, which makes you much more likely to feel things like jitters, anxiety, or have trouble sleeping. Knowing which camp you're in is a total game changer. Okay, so now we get the science of the buzz and the science of the crash. So how do we actually use this knowledge? This is all about making caffeine work for you, instead of against you with just a few simple science-backed strategies. Here's your toolkit for a smarter buzz. First, hydrate. Drink a glass of water before you have your coffee. Next, time it right. Try waiting about an hour after you wake up. Let your body's natural morning cortisol peak pass first. Third, move your body. Remember all that sugar caffeine releases? Go for a quick walk. Use that energy. Fourth, pair it with protein and fiber. Don't have it with a sugary donut. That's just going to make the crash way worse. And finally, if you feel like you're drinking too much, cut back strategically. Wean yourself off slowly to avoid those nasty withdrawal headaches. So, look, at the end of the day, caffeine isn't inherently good or bad. It's just a powerful tool. And now that you understand the rules, how it plays with your brain, your hormones, and your unique genetics, you're the one in control. You can hack your own habit. So the only question left is, how are you going to play the game? Hope this helps. Do not forget to subscribe for more interesting molecular stories. See you in the next one.